Folks, welcome to the preseason Baseball Boys Power Rankings. We do have our league insider, our league Jeff Passan, with us today, Jonathan Perry. Jonathan, how you doing today, bud?
Oh man, I'm having a wonderful day. How are you?
Hey, we're doing all right. We're kind of gonna jump into it. I do have a couple questions first, or maybe one question. So what did you do in order to gather information for how these power rankings are?
Yeah, so I just sent out an anonymous survey to every owner, and they filled out their own power rankings and what they felt the season would look like. So this is all anonymous, and it all comes from the owners. You have no idea who voted who, and I'm excited to jump into it.
Fantastic. So we're gonna start at the bottom. Uh, the power rankings. This is where the owners thought that teams would end up at the end of the year. Number 12, Willie Mays Hayes. Is this
Yep.
surprising to you at all?
No, not really. Um, so if you take a look at his roster, right? Taking a look here. He's got 3 ball players on the bench, 3 hitters on the bench. He currently has 3 catchers on his roster. He's taking a very strange approach that I have not seen in my many years of covering this league. He's got some good ball players. He's got Mike Trout, he's got Trey Turner, Austin Riley. His pitching depth is an issue, though. He has Shohei Ohtani, and as we know, Ohtani is not pitching this year. And I would say his best pitcher is on the IL right now in Walker Bueller. And as we know, pitching carries you in this league, and he just doesn't have it.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment of his team. Um, we've seen him struggle for years and years and years. Maybe he just thought this was the year he switches something up. You
Yeah.
know.
Yep.
We're gonna move on to number 11 now. Now this one, I have questions for the owners, to be
Yeah.
honest. After
I
seeing
agree.
this, but number 11 on the power rankings, we have Lion Lover 15, a
Yep.
team that started the season so hot. They did slow down, but they never slowed down to where they were out of it, right?
Yep.
Um, so what were you hearing from around the league as to what's going on with this placement of this team?
So here's the crazy thing. Lion Lover actually has a first place vote in my power ranking survey. One person has a lot of faith in Lion Lover. Everybody else thinks this team's going to go off the rails real quick.
Hmm.
Um, if you just take a peek at the roster, I have to agree with the owners here. I do. Um, we saw a lot from this team last year, but honestly, I just don't see it this year. Couple players already on the IL. Matt McLean, which will probably end up being their best player, out for a while this
Yeah.
year. And the pitching depth, Pablo Lopez and Logan Webb are a great 1-2 punch. But after that, you see Grayson Rodriguez on there, hasn't shown anything since he's been up. Christian Javier injured last year, so you don't really know. Kenley Jansen's getting old. Josiah Gray is another question mark. So um, with Lion Lover, I think there's so many question marks. But if those question marks go in the right direction, the owners are going to be looking real silly.
Yeah. Well, and I think with Lion Lover, what's difficult is the way that she drafts her team. I know last year she did some wild things in the
Yep.
draft. Her
Yep.
strat this year, and we're gonna talk to her about that when I interview her. So we're not gonna get too into it. But she had a strat this year, and again, kind of a questionable one. Do you think that had
Hmm.
anything to play?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it did because there were better players on the board, and she stuck to what she was doing. But at the same time, I like that from an owner.
Mm-hmm.
Stick to your guns. You ride it out, and if it goes off the rails, I'm to blame. That's essentially how she's running this team this year.
Which is fair.
Yep.
We're
Absolutely.
gonna move on to 10th place. I don't think there's a whole lot to say about this team. Uh, First year in the league,
Mm-hmm.
so it's well, not first year actually, coming out of retirement, right?
Correct.
But back in the
Correct.
day, this team had a lot of question marks surrounding it and not a lot of success. The
Correct.
Svenska Vikingers will be our number 10 team in the power ranking. Surprise you at all? I'm guessing it doesn't. Um, what's the roster looking like over there?
I'll be honest, I didn't expect 10. I expected a lot lower than that. Um, but some dogs on this team. You talk about Haesung Kim, you talk about Francisco Lindor, and Ronald Acuna Jr. is maybe the best player in the league.
Mm-hmm.
The question mark is everybody surrounding those three players. You look at the pitching. Uh, Yamamoto took a chance on Yamamoto. It's already biting him a little bit. Um, we'll see what happens with that. I think Yamamoto kind of has to come into his own, and we'll see. And outside of that, it's just the pitching depth isn't there. Camilo Duvall, I think, is the best relief pitcher that was on the market, but he also has Jordan Hicks. So one of those is going to be closing, the other won't.
Right.
Um, and you got to have those closers. So we'll see with this team. I think pitching depth isn't there, and hitting depth. You have the stars, you just don't have the depth.
Yeah. And depth is really what carries you in this league, especially with the
Hmm.
new rules surrounding waivers, having to wait 3 days until that player's available for you
Yep.
to activate them onto your roster. It'll be interesting.
Yep.
Moving on to number 9. Now this one I think is probably one of the more fair rankings. I do believe that there tends to be some question marks around this team every year. He
Yep.
takes a very no failure approach to his players. But at number 9 we have the Clown and Hobo Institute. To be honest with you, I would ask your opinion on his roster, but I guarantee that 90% of those players will not be there after the first week if they struggle. As we know, he tends to drop a lot of players, pick a lot of players up. What do you expect to see out of this team this year?
I think this is an underrated team. I really do. His top three pitchers: Aaron Nola, Chris Bassett, Shane Bieber. That's tough.
That's
That's tough
strong.
for any team. He's got Braxton Garrett and Devin Williams both on the IL. I think this team is a team to be a little bit worried about if you're playing them. It's any given week type team. Who knows what you'll get from this team? You'll have a lot of streaky hitters. You have a player that's not even in the major leagues on his team. But if the young man Junior Caminero ends up in the majors, that is maybe draft pick of the year.
Yeah.
But he's not in the majors. So, but you look at his team: JT Realmuto, Mookie Betts, Alex Bregman, Bo Bichette, Xander Bogaerts. He has the star power, but then he has Chris Bryant, Giancarlo Stanton. Can those guys stay healthy?
Right. And I think health is going to be a big question for him this year. The thing is, if they
Absolutely.
don't stay healthy, even if it's for a very short period of time, they won't be on his roster. And so it'll be
Yeah,
interesting to see what other teams can kind of find diamonds in the rough.
correct.
And what teams are going to be able to pick those up and what the waiver order is going to be when those guys come available. Moving on to number 8. Now, this is a team that nobody knows anything about. As far as strategy, as far as decision making, as far as if they will make it in this league. We have the number 1 Gunna. What are your thoughts on this team? I mean, I feel like so much is just up in the air.
Yeah, it's another one of those teams that has question marks. Uh, a lot of Orioles players. The question is, which version of the Orioles are we getting this year?
Yeah,
Are they going to have a sophomore slump this year? If you get sophomore slump Orioles, this team is going to finish last. I don't see that happening. You have some really good names: Adley Rushman, Jose Altuve. You can never fail with Jose Altuve. He's one of the more consistent players that you can grab. Juan Soto, Christian Yelich. He's one that I think could be in for a good year.
the dark
Uh,
horse.
Again, another issue is pitching depth. George Kirby, Dylan Cease. Will he pitch like Dylan C should, or which version will we get?
Yeah.
He doesn't have much depth with Kyle Bradish out for a long time, so we'll just have to see on him. But I do like the makeup of his team.
Yeah. Well, in a league where pitchers can carry your team so far, but
Hmm.
they can also destroy your team very quickly too.
Yep.
One thing I've noticed is a lot of these teams, especially at the bottom here, there's just so many question marks surrounding their rosters. There's not a lot of hard factual things that you can say about them.
Absolutely.
Moving on to number 7, we have a team. Don't know if I can really say much more than that. We have
It's a team.
Jung Like a Horse. Jung Like a Horse, his roster's always been up and down. Never been the worst team consistently, but never been good. What are they looking like this year?
I gotta say, this is gonna be a very underrated baseball team this year.
Mm.
Here's the two big things I worry about with him. Sonny Gray and Garrett Cole are both out. We don't know how long both of those players will be out, but they're out.
Mm.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
It looks like Sonny Gray will be back soon. Garrett Cole, we don't know. And Garrett Cole, it's a big name to have out. But the rest of his team, my goodness, Bryce Harper, Matt Chapman, CJ Abrams is going to be a very good player this year. Kyle Tucker, Luis Robert, Yanier Diaz. Like this is a solid ball team. And I think it's right in the spot that it should be because his pitching, Kevin Gausman, Zach Allen, this is a solid team. Solid team.
Yeah.
The question is those injuries.
Well, and with those injuries, they're players that are hard to not have on your roster even when they are injured. Because they can change your entire season. The goal though is to have your team competitive until they come back. And I think that's can be difficult with a lot less depth.
Yeah, a lot of teams they build their roster for August, September, October. And I think this is a team built for September, August, September, or October. And if they can stay in it till then, watch out.
Yeah. We're going to move on to number 6. This team, surprising finish to last year, really was. There were some big storylines around this team. The Springfield Isotopes, where are we sitting kind of on that scale of the Springfield Isotopes sitting at 6?
So I see this team as a team with so much potential, scary potential. You know what Pete Alonso is going to bring, right? That's pride. Him, Schwarber, Alvarez. That's his backbone. Then you got some young guys: Royce Lewis, Ellie De La Cruz, Michael Harris. Those are guys that could take off this year. And that's just the batters. You look at his pitching: Zach Wheeler, Freddie Peralta. Freddie Peralta was on the same team as Corbin Burns last year, and he led the Milwaukee Brewers in strikeouts.
Wow.
He is a very, very underrated pitcher, and I think he's a great fantasy pitcher to have on your team.
Mm-hmm.
There are some question marks around his pitching. There's some injuries that he has going on, but I really do think that this team is poised for a good year.
Yeah, I mean, and like I had mentioned, they really finished the year off strong last year. The question is are they going to be able to do that from week 1, from week 2, from week 3? This is a very difficult league to come back in, but I'm gonna be honest, I think they're gonna be scary.
Yeah.
In the number 5 hole, we have Angel Hernandez for Prez. This is a interesting team to talk about. I think one of the things with Angel Hernandez for Prez is the talent that this team generally holds. You expect them to succeed, and over and over and over again, they don't. They fail. Right. They fall flat on their face, and they're one of those teams that tends to be really bad, then really, really good, and then really bad again, keeping themselves out of any out of a competitive fall. What's your thoughts on his roster this year?
His hitting is solid. A lot of guys that don't strike out, but then there's a couple in there that are going to hit for power and are going to strike out. Mm-hmm. You look at a guy like Luis Ariz. That's average right there. You're going to get points from Luis Ariz, and he's probably not going to lose you many points every game. Then you go down, Fernando Tatis Jr., solid player. Julio Rodriguez. Stephen Kwan, another guy that's not going to lose you many points. Then you go into the likes of Willie Adames. Dude is going to hit 20, 25, 30 home runs this year, but he's also going to strike out quite a few times. And then an Anthony Rizzo. Can he stay healthy this year? If he can stay healthy, watch out for this hitting team. Randy Arozarena is on there. The thing I really, really like about Angel Hernandez this year is their pitching. Spencer Strider. I got to tell you, Spencer Strider is the best pitcher to have in this league. Simply put. He's going to strike batters out. He's going to win games. He's not going to lose you points. It's one thing that we know about Spencer Strider. Emmanuel Clase. Last year, Clase was, if he's Class A this year, that's a great pick. Last year, he blew too many saves for my liking. But then you go down. Hunter Green, dude's going to strike out 200 batters. Eduardo Rodriguez, can he stay healthy all year? If he can, very underrated. Tristan McKenzie's coming in hurt, but I think he could be a solid player. And then having Justin Verlander there on the back end on the IL, another team that later in the season, health and consistency. If this team can stay consistent, watch out.
Well, I think that's always been a question of this team is where is
Absolutely.
the consistency?
Right.
So we'll see if they're going to be able to turn it around, for year number 8. Now, we are going to move into the top 4. These are the big 4. Did anything of the top 4 surprise you as far as rankings? Yes or, does it make sense?
Does it make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
This is the one part that there's maybe one team in there that I don't entirely agree with, but the rest of them, I'm like, you're right where you should be.
And is that the fact the team is in the top 4, or is that their ranking in the top 4?
Just the fact that they're in the top 4 this year. Personally, I did not have them in my top 4.
Okay.
But the rest of the owners saw it very differently.
Interesting. And that's why we have everybody vote,
Correct. Yep.
So, number 4, coming in at number 4, we have Cleveland Rocks. Depending on the year, they may have a different name. It depends on how well they did the year before. Cleveland Rocks, though, they're always solid, but it seems like they tend to come up one game short. Very often. They're always there. It's just always that last game that they have a hard time hurdling over. Thoughts on them this year?
This is my team I didn't have in the top 4. I had them closer to 6 this year.
Okay.
If you look at their roster, they have solid players. You look at Freddie Freeman. Freddie Freeman is top 5 in fantasy hitters. Adolis Garcia, Christian Walker, they're always solid players. The question is some of these younger guys that he has on his team. Ezekiel Tovar, Ke'Bryan Hayes, Gabriel Moreno, Andres Jimenez. There's a lot of names here. You don't know what you're getting from them. His strength is his pitching this year. Framber Valdez, 200 plus strikeouts every year. Jesus Luzardo I believe he was hurt for a little bit last year, and he had over 200 strikeouts. Justin Steele was solid last year. Bobby Miller only played half the year, and he had a really, really good year. His relief pitching, Evan Phillips, very good. Maybe the best closer I think you can get in fantasy. AJ Puck is going to be a starter. It's that depth in his pitching that worries me a little bit. With Kodai Senga on the IL, can guys like Michael Wacha, Brian Wu, Andrew Abbott hold things together until Senga and Williams come back? That's the big question mark with Cleveland Rocks.
Now, especially with some of these teams too, I think there's something to be said for the advantage of schedule as well, right? So you have these top 4 teams that are expected to be the most successful teams in the league. Cleveland Rocks kind of has to hold it together for a little bit, kind of duct tape on the ship type thing. What's their schedule look like for the first 3 or 4 weeks?
Yeah, so he starts off tough. Pablo Sanchez to start. Springfield Isotopes week 2. That could end up hurting his season real bad.
Yeah.
If you want to be in the playoffs, 4 or 5 losses will do it. That'll get you right out. But then after that, Willie Mays Hayes and Svenska Vikingers. That's 2 ball games he could win. Um, Young Like a Horse, Angel Hernandez, Clown and Hobo Institute. I could very, very well see him going 500 in those first 7 weeks. It's after that where we got to wonder, how do things turn out? The thing that he has an advantage in here is his last 5 weeks. Svenska Vikingers voted 10 in our power rankings. Young Like a Horse. He's not top 5, or he's not top 6. Angel Hernandez for Perez could be a tough one. Clown and Hobo, bottom of the power rankings. Lion Lover, bottom of the power rankings. He has that advantage at the bottom of his schedule. It's the top that's going to give him issues.
Which is when he needs help the most.
Correct.
Moving on, we're gonna get into the top 3. We hit number 4. It's time for the top 3. I don't think that this is really surprising to a lot of people. I think there is a debate to be made for this team, kind of, to be honest, to be moved up one, maybe even down one. It's an interesting team, but we have Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
Where's Ronald Reagan going to finish, and how's he going to get there?
I think he'll finish. He'll be in the playoffs, for sure. My question marks, his hitting depth isn't quite there. You talk about a Jeremy Pena, solid, but you never know really what you'll get with him. Which player is he going to turn out to be? Trevor Story, will he stay healthy? Jake Berger, do we get second half of the year, first half of the year, Jake Berger? Cody Bellinger, then you look the outfield. Doesn't impress me a whole ton. Josh Chisholm is never healthy. Jarren Duran, you don't know what you'll get with him. Usually his strength is pitching, and I think we have that same deal this year. Luis Castillo, Max Fried, Joe Ryan, 1, 2, 3. Doesn't get much better than that. And then his depth is pretty solid with guys like Carlos Rodon, Merrill Kelly, Yu Darvish, just a solid depth. And then on the IL, Yuri Perez, who once he comes off the IL, he's going to be one of the better pitchers in our league. It's always the same thing with Ronald Reagan. His pitching is very, very good. It's what are you going to get with his hitters? We'll see this year. We'll see.
Yeah, well, and he's always kind of taken the approach too, where he may have 4 batting spots open, right?
Yeah.
It's more about not losing points in the
correct.
batting order for him than it is even getting points. Allow his pitchers to carry the team and just let his batters not hurt him.
Yep.
Which we have seen happen in the past.
Right. And you know what? His top hitters are top hitters. Matt Olson, Marcus Semien.
Yep.
It really doesn't get much better than those two as a duo. So if those two can carry his hitters, I think we'll see another good season from Ronald Reagan.
Agree. We have 2 teams left. We have Pablo Sanchez and Joe Johnson remaining. The number 1 team in the power ranking, we're going to start there, to be honest. We have Pablo Sanchez. Now, in my opinion, I think that this ranking makes the most sense out of every ranking because this man does not know how to lose. As I said in my draft intro video, I wish luck to everybody except for him. I hope everybody has fun except for him. He has had enough fun. Share a little bit, right? But number 2, Joe Johnson. Those 2 teams, do you agree or do you disagree with the owners on those 2 rankings? And what do you see in these 2 teams?
I absolutely agree with these rankings. The issue I see with Joe's team and why I wouldn't put him number 1 is just an all-around team. I think Pablo Sanchez has more of an all-around team than Joe's team does. I see some issues in the outfield in Joe Johnson's. You don't see that with Pablo Sanchez. His pitching, some question marks here. Chris Sale, I don't remember the last time Chris Sale was healthy. Blake Snell, how is he going to do just signing with a team? I know it's early, but later on in the season, I think he'll be all right. But are those early games going to get to him? A guy like Charlie Morton. Charlie Morton's an old man now. Will he be able to carry a full season with Charlie Morton? And then the depth, I don't really see the depth in pitching that you see with Pablo Sanchez. Nestor Cortez is solid. AJ Minter is a good relief pitcher, but he's not a closer. Same thing with Ranger Suarez. Um, we'll see what we get from those players.
Yeah, I mean, and even with Joe Johnson, I mean, I have a feeling having a lot of these old dudes on his team, that midsummer stretch, I think, is going to be his biggest question mark. I don't think he's going to have any trouble picking up new players if he needs. The questions are going to come in of how long do you hold on to some of these guys if they get hurt, if they start to struggle. Because they've had long careers because of their consistency and their ability to perform. How long do you hope that that's going to happen when it's not happening, right? Now, Pablo Sanchez, this team, always well-rounded, always great. You know, you have some teams that go pitcher heavy, some teams that focus more on batters. This team just tends to always have it all, and it's always firing on all cylinders. What are they looking like this year on a roster standpoint?
So the owners almost unanimously agreed on this one. He had the most first place votes, and he didn't have a single vote outside of the top 4. This team, I don't see any weak spots with this team. Maybe in their outfield a little bit. Young-Hoo Lee, coming over from Japan. How's he going to play this year? How is he going to deal? Evan Carter, his first full season in the majors. Is he going to be able to stay consistent? Spencer Steer, the same thing with him. He's got a young outfield, but then he's got Lourdes Gurriel Jr. and JD Martinez, kind of those veteran guys that do what they do, right? Then you talk about star power. Sean Murphy, Yandy Diaz, Nolan Arenado, Corey Seager. Those guys just ball. Those guys ball. You look at his pitching, I think this is the strength of Pablo Sanchez this year. And I don't think you could have gotten much of a better pitching staff. Corbin Burns, Tyler Glasnow, just dudes. They're dudes. They strike guys out and they win games.
Dogs.
Then 2 real dark horse guys that I know I talked to a lot of owners. They said they were really, really upset that Pablo Sanchez came out with these 2 guys. You talk about Tarek Skubal, who this year is primed to lead that Detroit staff and be a dude. Cole Reagans is the same way. There are some people that have him on their Cy Young list. Who is he? He came over from the Rangers in the Chapman trade last year, and he just balled out the second half of the year for the Kansas City Royals. Then you look at his pitching depth. David Bednar is closing games for the Pirates this year. Paul Seward, he's closing games for the D-backs. Those are 2 guys that are going to get a ton of saves this year. Marcus Stroman, how is he going to pitch for the Yankees over there in New York? There's a lot of pressure in New York. Can Stroman deal with that pressure? And then some guys, I'm not too sure about. Mason Miller, Cutter Crawford, Clark Schmidt, Seth Lugo. Those are guys that I kind of question with Pablo Sanchez. That might be his one little weakness, is that pitching depth all the way at the bottom. But we'll see what we get from those guys.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun season, that's for sure. I think we're going to see a lot of the same things that we've seen in the past, but I think there are going to be a lot of brand new experiences for some coaches, some teams, and some situations that teams may find themselves in that they haven't had to deal with before. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited. I hope all the owners are excited. I hope they are getting geared up. Opening day is coming up here. Thursday, yeah. So 3 days. But that, ladies and gentlemen, is your 1 through 12 power rankings. Do you agree? Do you disagree? I mean, Jonathan, our league insider, being able to break down all these rosters, he's the ones that's been having the conversations with the owners. He's been looking at the numbers, and I think there's some I agree with, there's some I disagree with, but I think for the most part, it's pretty close to spot on. Again, it's really gonna depend on what happens kind of in the middle of the year and how many of these players are not only performing, but even if they're still on teams. You
Hmm.
know, who picks them up, who they're getting rid of to replace. But Jonathan, is there anything else you need to say to the good people of the Baseball Boys?
No, I'm ready to go. Ready to get this season rolling.
Hey, I think we all are. Jonathan, thank you for joining me. Thank you for taking time out of your days to do this for us. And we'll see you on the other side, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
Welcome.